Okay.
Welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm still Robert Winters.
And I'm sort of Judy Nathans. Hopefully I won't disappear again and cough in the background, but you never know. We're live. What can we do?
Definitely, that's the way it goes. So anyway, might as well just continue with a few things, kind of rattle off a few things that was interesting at last night's city council meeting.
The main thing to approve the budget, you already talked about
by far
that.
the most significant thing. I mean, I've always said that if the city council did two things, appoint a city manager and approve a budget, then they could pretty much get their paycheck signed and take a hike, right? Everything else is extra. So whenever they're doing some of these major fiscal responsibility things, I take it pretty seriously. So that was one part, but there was some other interesting things. One thing that I found interesting, well, actually, let me just sort of start off. We'll dispense with this relatively quickly. There was a city council order proposed, I think it was Leland Chung and Nadeem Mazen, that called for, I mean, it's sort of an admirable idea, calling for giving a bonus or an advantage in terms of getting access to inclusionary housing units for artists. Now this is like, you have to be a certified artist in order to do this. When I first read that, and I've had this same reaction in the past, I would say to myself, okay, we can all agree that having artists in a city is a good thing, but why stop there? I think I once joked it was good to have mathematicians too, and some of them are underpaid.
Well, Mark McGovern made that point.
Yeah, he did. It's like there are people who work in childcare, and there are a lot of underpaid teachers, firefighters, people who can't afford to live here. So shouldn't they all be given bonuses as well? And the thing is people will make a point about how it's an essential part of the vibrancy of a city to have an artistic presence in the city. If you're talking about someplace out in the middle of nowhere, I mean, I'm going to totally agree with that. But we actually have two major universities, actually more, at least two, arguably more, that actually have a lot of cultural aspects associated with the university. So, we actually are already beginning at an advantage. I don't want to see some of the artistic community get driven out of town any more than they already have, but I don't think that it's fair to somehow suggest that if a few performing artists had to move to Everett, that somehow the cultural traditions of Cambridge would just cave. To me, that's not a fair explanation
my
at all.
take on that is I was actually surprised because I read further, and I guess they said the average yearly income was $46,000 something for an artist, a professional artist, and that would qualify him for inclusionary zoning.
Right.
But I thought, when I hear that about artists, I think, well, the artists don't just need a bed, they need a space to do their art.
That's right.
So I was thinking more studio space, which I think is a separate thing than living space, although some artists live where they work. So you do need more than just a small apartment. However, aren't we doing a lot of maker spaces around the city?
I think
and to me, if you could, get warehouses and have studio space, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who have some affiliation with a place like MIT have access to lots of those kinds of facilities.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't have affiliation.
I know. But I'm just saying is that so people who are lucky enough to have that affiliation find a way to get access.
What happened to the Foundry building? Was that supposed to be?
It's still in process, and there is supposed to be some component of what you might call maker space associated with that. I mean, I think if we could somehow press the do-over button, go back in time 10 years and start rethinking some of these, maybe people who are proponents of the arts should have been buying up some of the warehouse spaces and turning them into artist lofts and worker space.
People that are proponents of the art, meaning people that had money that are proponents of the arts?
Yeah, I mean, think those people could, before, just a real estate entity swooped in and turned them into new fancy condos. Maybe we should, I guess all I'm saying is there were opportunities that were lost. It's actually sort of a very real problem in Somerville right now. Somerville still actually has a lot of those spaces.
Isn't Brick Bottom a living and
that was pretty
space?
much built as that, though.
Right. So how did that happen? I guess Why
Well, it
couldn't
happened a
those
long
kinds of
time
things
ago.
happen?
It did happen a long time ago,
And maybe
it
you
could have
can't do
happened.
that anymore.
Well, I think in
It's
places, in
expensive.
Somerville, there were still opportunities, maybe still are some
I
opportunities.
don't know, Somerville's gotten as
Well,
expensive as
there were a lot of
Cambridge.
places all along the railroad tracks where there were factories and warehouses and things where there really are still to this day. You may not know about them, but they're in there, tucked in there, or places where there's sort of arts space for studios that are actually active. They're threatened though because there's more money by
Well,
turning
see,
them
that's the
down.
problem. The money isn't going to go to people like them.
Right. So I think it's a pretty big challenge trying to find
So
an answer.
I'm all for, I mean, aside from living, where you sleep, I think we do need more, thinking about where can
I
this
agree.
work.
I mean, the thing is if
Especially if you're an emerging artist or a new artist, you do not,
I
and you're
agree.
living with 3 roommates.
agree.
You might not mind living with the 3 roommates, but you'd like to have a space
I
to
think,
work.
and I think this is pretty much what the resolution that came out of the argument
Really?
last night.
I couldn't tell.
But what happened is that the order wasn't going to pass as is. I think
Right.
what will happen is that because it really was very, very specific just to one narrow
Right.
band
Right.
of recipients.
Right.
So
Right.
I think what will happen is that it'll be a larger discussion that will take place
Maybe a hearing.
in some council committee. And, in a funny kind of way, there's already people or anything that's kind of a hard question, they're kind of kicking over to the Envision Cambridge process, and, that process is
That's
going
such
to
a
be.
bad idea.
It's not a bad idea because this is sort of a long-term vision thing, but, and I'm sure, since I'm on Envision Cambridge Advisory Committee, this will be a topic we'll
Yeah,
bring
who
up.
mentioned that?
I'll
That's
bring
right.
it up.
It was brought in.
Yeah. So
Did Mark McGovern say
yeah, I mean,
that, or was it Nadine?
I
Somebody said
don't
it should be
remember.
part of that, yeah.
It might have been Mark, I'm not sure. But the thing is that, that's going to be a complicated process anyway, but this is a
Right.
part of what has to happen.
Exactly.
If the entire discussion of Envision Cambridge is all about how much housing or how little housing,
Then they've missed the point.
we've completely missed all the
Exactly.
points.
Right.
This really has to be about like the whole picture, including, accommodation for a lot of other things other than just housing.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I think it was a loss when we started losing some of the junkyards because you actually need a place to bring your, discarded
Yeah.
waste. But people don't want that. They
No.
want high-priced condos.
That's true.
Yeah.
Is that related all to this? I know there was, you mentioned an article that was in the Chronicle, which I think this also refers to, because this was on last Thursday, and I think the article about Kendall Square, and that the planning board.
Yeah, actually,
has-
yeah, that's right. And actually, I do actually even have I don't think people need to see the documents here about it
Yeah.
right now, but I did, after our show
Yeah,
last week,
it was the day after.
let's see, so actually I did, there was another meeting I went to, and then on the way home, I
Right.
went right by the planning board meeting, which
That's
is,
right.
which is like, a few hundred feet from where I live.
Oh, that's right, that was
Yeah.
that.
So I popped in there, and they were actually discussing sort of, I'm not going to call it the final approvals, but,
Yep.
the essential approvals
Yeah.
for the whole MIT Kendall development.
Right.
I guess what do they call that, south of Main Street,
Yeah,
SOMA.
yeah.
And, when I went in
More
there.
big projects with
Yeah.
the potential to turn Kendall Square into more of a neighborhood. Well, that's going to be.
Well, if the housing happened, but
Challenge.
honestly, to
Yeah.
me, that's not really going to happen so much as a result of what MIT is doing.
No.
There will be some housing, primarily down on Kendall, or the old, what we used to call the old Baxter building, Badger building, pardon me, but where the boat dock, the canoe rentals are.
Yes.
Down around there, there'll be housing. They'll be built into there. There'll be some graduate student housing, but they're also going to tear down Eastgate, which is graduate student
Eastgate,
housing.
oh, that's that.
It's the tall, thin one.
Between Memorial Drive and.
Yeah, it's not the most well-functioning. It's more
No.
all structured, no space.
Isn't that like family housing?
It is, and that's going to be replaced. So that'll stand until the other building is occupied, and then they'll knock it down. But some of, I like some of what MIT's planned, some of the big kind of foreboding cantilevered
Yeah.
structures, lurking out over the sidewalk. I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of every aspect of their architectural plan,
Yeah.
but then again,
Looks very
I'll leave
urban.
that to others.
Yeah. I like what it says with plans that include housing and even room for a grocery store. Come on.
Well, but I think the only time you'll actually see a grocery store,
Yeah.
if ever, is when the Volpe parcel gets some sort of
See a Whole
development.
Foods in there. Yeah.
That's really going to be the key part of that. So, but things are happening, and we'll just sort of wait and see.
Okay.
But when I went by the planning board there, they have for those who are kind of insiders here, they've set up a nice projection TV outside the planning board room with a lot of chairs, movable chairs. So it used to be if you're sitting in the planning board room, you have to sort of stay shut. You have to shut up the whole time.
Oh, I see.
Except when you're giving
So
testimony.
now the public can be outside.
So now you can actually stay outside. You can watch it and you can talk
Nice.
to everybody.
And
so
that's at community development,
yeah, it's over at 344 Broadway.
right around the corner.
Yeah, and so and I knew a lot of the MIT officials who were there.
Right.
Not just because I worked there, but bumped into them and talked with them all over. So it was great, just chatting them up and whatever. So that was a big thing.
Yeah.
And now they can kind of move on it. And I might as well mention here, this is rambling on, right? The Novartis building on Mass Ave is
Right down the street from here.
and 300 Mass Ave, which is where Takeda Millennium Pharmaceuticals was subject to a big zoning change a few years ago. They're pretty much now built to the point right now.
You're talking about the one that's the decorative front that was done by.
That's the Novartis extension.
Oh, an extension.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they have the Novartis in the old Necco building, and then this is also Novartis on the other side of the street.
Oh, okay.
But there's going to be ground floor retail, and they're almost to the point where they can start actually occupying that ground floor retail. I don't know that it'll actually be occupied until
Do you know what's
toward
going
fall.
in there?
I've heard it. Jesse Bearcon and his company are doing a lot of the matchmaking between what people want and who's actually out there looking for space. Some of the ones at 300 Mass Ave are pretty much almost they should actually be opening in the next few months. There'll be one place that's sort of a grilled cheese and bar kind of place.
Really?
Yeah.
300 Mass. So if I'm looking right down.
If you go
right
down
now,
toward
I see
MIT
the
from
U-Haul.
Central Square,
I see the
that's Main
U-Haul.
Street.
Yeah.
Right, so if you go down Mass Ave,
Okay.
right down on the right-hand side, going toward Main Street, where sort
Flower
of on the,
Bakery, or before Flower Bakery.
basically it's where the old let's for the old timers out
Yeah.
there, other than me,
Yeah.
where the old Father's Four bar was,
I don't remember.
which later was known as the Cambridgeport Saloon, and it was
I don't
sitting
remember
there
that.
empty for years and years and years.
Well, where's the Paradise?
That's further down. That's all the way down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's much closer to where
anyway,
we are right
we're
now.
actually going to get some
Yeah.
retail frontages opening up really soon.
Good.
So it's pretty exciting. So to see that actually coming to fruition. And actually, by the way, at the city council meeting, there were one of the manager's agenda items. There was some nice chunk of change being the third of 4 payments from Novartis and from the 300 Mass Ave developments. There were 4 payments at various stages in the development process. This is the third of 4 for both of them.
And what are those called again? Those payments?
These are not payments in lieu of taxes. These are
No,
one.
no, I know. There's another name for it. What is it?
No, these are mitigation funds.
Mitigation.
That's the one.
That's the word.
And they were basically as part of the rezoning that permitted
Right.
these buildings to be
We
built.
give you this, you give us that.
Right. So, but they don't just give you it all at one time. They do it when the zoning is approved and when the
Building's going.
building permits are made available, and then when
And
they're
where
ready.
does that
to
money
do-
go into the general housing
Generally,
trust?
these
or-
ones, I think it'll probably go toward that. But there may be another fund that's administered from the Community Development Department that will help. I think Iram Farouk was speaking about some of this money possibly being used as loan guarantees for people seeking home ownership opportunities from middle-income homeowners.
Okay.
So, it's not all about building affordable housing. Sometimes it's allowing people to, helping
to
people
get something, right.
actually
Okay.
access it on their own. So anyway, so that was
That's good.
what's happening. So that was happening on Mass Ave, but all the way down in Main Street, I'm actually looking right
Yeah,
down
we can
at
look
Main
right
Street
down
from
there,
here. Is where, right in the heart of Kendall Square, right around the head house of the T, across the street from the Marriott Hotel, is where all this action is going to be happening. And it's going to be big and significant, and it could be fabulous, and it could be horrible, but it's going to be interesting. So anyway, that's a comment, and the planning board said, okay, go ahead. Got this, I think it's the special permit approvals.
So that's different than this Kendall Square
No,
thing?
I think that's really what it is.
It's part of the same thing. Okay,
Yeah,
it's,
but
well,
the-
yeah,
but
the
to
MIT,
me-
Alexander Real Estate,
Alexander's over on
Volpe,
the
and
far
Boston
side.
Properties. Yeah, okay.
Right, but to me, from my point of view, not until the question of the Volpe site is settled, and that's very
Right.
unsettled right now.
Because that has to
Are
do
we
with the
gonna really
federal
see
government. Right.
that? Yeah. So, we'll see.
Yeah, okay.
That's definitely
So a lot of
kind
stuff happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that actually didn't get discussed, but almost got discussed, is 2 weeks ago, or was it 3? Wasn't there a roundtable in between? So there was a matter having to do with the Cambridge License Commission.
Oh, with the liquor.
Yeah, they were basically updating and revising some of the regulations relating to establishments that serve alcohol. Which in Cambridge doesn't mean a bar, because technically there are no bars in Cambridge.
What do you mean?
There are restaurants that serve
that have-
alcohol, and even if in fact it's just a few sandwiches in the afternoon, technically
You don't call it a bar?
they're all restaurants that serve alcohol.
Interesting.
But they're really bars, a lot of them are. But the thing is not every aspect of how we do things, including the cap areas, where there's certain, like the Central Square had, or technically still has a cap on how many pouring licenses you can have.
Pouring license.
Same thing with Harvard Square and a few other areas. But it's not strictly enforced, and the City of Cambridge started a new policy some years ago, not that long ago really, of having no value licenses that were non-transferable. Now, apparently this seems to contradict something in state law. And there's been some kind of conflict, and again, I am not in any way going to pretend to have all the facts on this, where you think about it, you have a situation, sort of like the Uber versus classical taxi cab
Like
dilemma.
licensing permit. Right.
Yeah, so a taxi cab medallion somebody pays hundreds of thousands of dollars for, and then somebody else gets one for free. Well, that creates conflict. Or Uber gets the right to do the same thing for free.
But taxi cabs were kind of a private thing, with those medallions where liquor license is run by a city, no?
Well, the thing is, the city issues both.
Okay.
But the thing is, once you have a medallion, you can sell it. Once you have a liquor license, you can sell it. So it becomes a marketable item.
Right.
So you have this kind of weird hybrid where some of them are saleable and some of them are not.
So you're saying they changed it so some are non-transferable and now the old ones still are?
So I think whatever was passed will be grandfathered in, but it's not so clear that they'll be able to issue non-saleable ones, because apparently according to the state, you can sell them. So the city's going to have to do something to kind of get this all set right.
So what is this, they've asked for a public meeting with the Liquor Commission?
Not so much. Maybe that'll happen, I don't know. But, there is some special legislation that permits, it is perfectly legal that the city council can designate the Cambridge License Commission to carry out to have this regulatory authority. But there are some who would argue, no, that's not a right that you can delegate. And I think that's not true. I think they most certainly can. But I was speculating in Civic Journal on Monday that, if you can imagine what it'd be like if the Cambridge City Council had to be the regulatory agency for every liquor license in the city.
Terrible.
Half the business, at least, of the city council would be basically adjudicating these kinds of things.
They should not be doing that. Isn't that why you have a liquor commission?
Well, that's why we give it to the license commission to do.
License commission.
So with the blessing of the council. So, and if that is not 100% in conformity with state law, then my opinion is they got to amend the state law because it's a totally reasonable thing.
Right.
So anyway, that was something that the city council had voted on. I forget exactly what the vote was, but Councilor Devereaux had asked for reconsideration of the vote to bring it back. I think there was some issue about.
She wrote a letter, which I read, and it seemed to be reasonable. Something about whether ordering something, but it was changing the language.
Right. In her letter, she also seems to want to sort of further this notion that somehow the city council should have some of this authority. Perhaps I was misreading this. But
I didn't read that.
But anyway, it was pretty clear right when they started the discussion, they moved reconsideration, that in fact the same people who had voted the way they had 2 weeks ago were not going to change. So in fact, the matter never really got discussed, even though there was some intention from 3 councilors to have a further discussion about it. All right, I think there is some discussion. I don't know that it had to be done at a city council, but I think this is something that those who are interested in the evolving regulatory climate for liquor licenses in the city should maybe tune in to see
I thought
what
there
the
was a
license
call
commission
for
is doing.
a hearing or some kind of meeting with the.
There are some things that were established 20 plus years ago that need to be revised.
Right.
In my view, the liquor cap areas need to be revised. It may actually make more sense to just eliminate them entirely and just deal with liquor licenses, take them away based on a case-by-case basis, and it just has to be rethunk. I feel the same way about the fast food cap. They have fast food caps
We have fast food
in
caps?
Central Square, for example.
What defines fast food?
Well, back when there was a proliferation of places like McDonald's and Burger Kings and things like that, so the city went to great pains to define a fast food establishment that serves food in a particular way and uses, disposable stuff or takeout foods or whatever. Well, the problem is that a lot of places that people now find incredibly desirable, like Clover, for example.
Most people eat in there, though.
Right, but the thing is that
I wouldn't call that fast food.
Right, but the thing is in some respects it is. So I think what they really need to do is they have to update. And the other thing too is that when people are losing their minds over fast food proliferation 20 plus years ago, now that was before we started getting this proliferation of banks and phone stores and other things, what people are sometimes referring to as formula businesses. One of the most, I thought, very, very good outcomes of this K2, C2 process was they actually recommended making some changes so that, in fact, we would not be regulating things just as being, quote, fast food establishments, but regulating things as formula businesses. So that, so if you want to kind of shape the nature of a square like Harvard Square, Central Square, Kendall Square, Inman Square, it wouldn't be just based on, well, we have a McDonald's and a Burger King, so therefore such and such a place can't move in, right? I just think we need to rethink some of these things. If it was up to me, I would change the laws also to not only allow but encourage food carts out on the street, food trucks, hot dog vendors. But the way the regulations are written right now, if you wanted to open up a hot dog stand in Lafayette Square, even if nobody else was selling hot dogs anywhere nearby, you wouldn't be allowed to do it because there is another restaurant within 300 feet of you.
I thought they're working on that, though. There are places where there's.
They're talking about it, but
it's true. You do not see food trucks.
Yeah, my only real point here is that there are certain regulations and laws that were established decades ago that need to be rethought, and it's time to do it. How about the Second Amendment?
I mean, if you want to go that far back,
You don't have to become a complete free-for-all.
No, but really, when you think about things that need to be changed.
I mean, there were some times I've heard stories from real old-timers about North Mass Ave many, many years ago, and one of the reasons why some control of liquor establishments is called for, because Arlington was dry, so if you have one town which is dry, then the most natural thing to do is to open up a bar right over the border. And there used to be along North Mass Ave, there were bars and bars and bars, and people would be zooming in on Mass Ave in order to access them. So if how do you regulate that, or should you regulate that? I think you can make a good case that if there comes a point where it becomes no longer serving the public good. So I just think we need to rethink the whole matter. Right. I was also entertained, I think I wrote this on Civic Journal as well. Apparently, I didn't know this, is that, when I was growing up, well, not when I was growing up, because that makes me sound like I was underage, but when I was old enough to get a beer at a bar, this tradition, and this was true in every bar in New York I ever knew, is that for every 2 or 3 beers you bought at the bar, the bartender, quote, bought you back one.
Oh, wow.
And you were going to give him a bigger tip, and it was that was sort of part of the way it was done. And I've known some bartenders in Cambridge, not that I spend much time in bars anymore, but who would do that. This is apparently illegal. I had no idea. And I think, well, that's nuts. To me, if the bartender buying you back one is providing free liquor for one person or a group of persons in violation of an ordinance, then you need to sort of ease up a little bit. This is not the same thing as basically the bartender just handing over free liquor for everybody in the joint or something
But
like
who's
that.
going to know?
Well, all right, fine.
See, there we go. I mean, it's all about enforcement.
I'm all about looking the other way
Yeah.
for something like that. But
Okay.
Anyway, I think maybe some of these regulations just need to be
Oh,
rethought
absolutely.
a little bit here. So, other things going on around town would be there's still the city manager search.
Didn't they have a meeting last week?
They did have a meeting this past week, and they officially, they took a vote to recommend to the full city council that a 3-month contract extension be extended to Richie Rossi, who was totally agreeable to that.
Okay.
And and they said, well, possible other extensions, and Richie was saying like, well, I'd rather not.
Right.
You know.
Because this would then bring it to what, September 30th or something?
Yeah, so this will go, so Richie will be around to September 30th. And then at that point, there's a provisions in state law for having a acting city manager be a department head. And there are plenty of great people to choose from. But this will buy them a little time. And the city manager search process is scheduled to come to a culmination approximately September 26th.
Okay.
Now-
So there haven't been any, when do they publicly,
You will
put
not hear any
publication?
names.
They're not names, but when do they advertise it?
If that hasn't already, that'll happen pretty soon.
Speaking of which, there is a recycling director now
Posting.
posted. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right, so anyway, the process is continuing. They did give an announcement about people who are on one of the vetting committees for the manager process, which does include some city councilors. This was the subject of this argument about having a lottery last week, right? So anyway, it's moving along. But for those who really pay attention to this stuff, like me, you should be hoping and expecting that we should get this whole matter resolved by the end of September.
Hopefully,
So-
yes. Good.
Yeah. Anyway, there were other things we could talk about,
And
like
there's a
presidential primaries.
Oh, well, let's forget that.
Let's skip
right
that
now.
for another time. So.
There is one going on. Washington is having a primary today.
Yeah.
Washington, even though they had a caucus.
Well, anyway, until next week, this has been Cambridge Inside
Out.